So today we're going to go over the terms from last class. My intent is for you guys to understand what the terms that I talked about mean. So if I say a certifying physician's assistant, I'd like you to be able to tell me what the requirements are and what their limitations are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over those categories over with you today. I'm going to also talk about product manufacturing, home delivery, and at the end of class, we're going to do some problems together. Let the victor win. I like competition, don't you? Just kidding. I know millennials don't like competition. You guys are all about working together now. At this point, you're like, aren't you a millennial? And then I'm like, don't judge me. Okay, let's get started before as I continue to talk to myself back and forth. The Massachusetts Medical Marijuana Program. These are the things we went over last class. And so you guys should remember this, and if you don't, great. You're gonna remember it after today. Okay, so Massachusetts Medical Marijuana Program, what does it allow you to do? It allows a registered qualifying patient, and you remember we defined that, to obtain either a 14-day or 60-day supply of medical marijuana from a registered marijuana dispensary, a personal caregiver, or via hardship cultivation. And they have to obtain it pursuant to having obtained a written certification that was issued by a certifying healthcare provider. That makes sense, right? You're like, yeah, I was here last week. Why are you telling me this again? I need content, yo. Just kidding. I need y'all to remember this. Okay, so what is a healthcare professional provider? A healthcare professional or provider, an HCP, is either a licensed physician, a physician's assistant, or a certified nurse practitioner. Either of these three count as a healthcare professional. These individuals have to be qualified to issue written certifications for medical use, and authorized by the commission. So how do they register? So you have to have it, remember, all three of these people, they have to have at least one established place of practice in Massachusetts. They have to have a full license with no restrictions on their ability to prescribe medicine in Massachusetts, no restrictions on their ability to prescribe controlled substances, and they must complete their continuing education requirements. Y'all following? So those are the four requirements in order for you to be a healthcare provider, be it a physician, physician assistant, or nurse practitioner. And in order for you to issue a written certification, the HCP has to certify that in his or her professional opinion, that the use of medical marijuana would outweigh the health risks for a qualifying patient. All right, what is a qualifying patient? Well, it depends, right? If you're 18 years old or older, you can be a qualifying patient if you're a Massachusetts resident, you've been diagnosed by a Massachusetts licensed healthcare provider. We just talked about what those HCPs are, as having a debilitating medical condition. Those are the only three requirements if you are 18 years old or above. If you're 17 years or younger, you have to be Massachusetts residents, but here you have to be diagnosed by two Massachusetts licensed certifying physicians. You cannot be certified by a nurse or by a physician's assistant. In addition, if you're under 18, one of these certifying healthcare providers has to be a pediatrician or a subspecialist of pediatrics. Y'all following? In addition, and this is the saddest part, if you're 17 years old or younger, you have to not only have a debilitating medical condition, it also has to be life-limiting. And remember what life-limiting was? You had a prognosis of less than 2 years. So it's pretty bad. All right. There you go. So you're debilitating is basically if you have extreme weakness, you're tired, it impacts your strength, you're losing a lot of weight, and it impacts a major life activity. It's life-limiting if it's debilitating, does not respond to curative treatment, and prognosis is no greater than 2 years. So in order for you to be under 18 to receive a medical card, it's very difficult. But again, doctors do have leeway in giving these written certifications, but they have to go on record, and some of them don't like to go on record for giving children weed. All right. Moving on. So do you guys have any questions? Great. Now we're going to talk about medical marijuana treatment centers, formerly called registered marijuana dispensaries. You'll hear them referred to as RMDs or MTCs in the field because people haven't fully switched over and people don't like to switch over. Don't make me call them MTCs if I used to call them RMDs. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? I'm going to go give you an overview of MTCs, talk about the general requirements. We're going to talk about cultivation, product manufacturing, dispensing operations. We're going to get into home delivery. And have y'all even heard about the secret shopper program? If you haven't, that means it's working because the secret hasn't been released yet. My jokes are here all night, okay? I don't know why y'all keep signing up for this class. The jokes get worse every semester. All right, so let's go over this. What is an MTC and what is this vertical integration that Big Mama spoke about that she hated in the beginning? I'm glad you asked. So an MTC, a medical treatment center, is any entity that is licensed to acquire, cultivate, possess, process, transport, sell, distribute, deliver, dispense, or administer marijuana. And if at this point you're like, Big Mama, why didn't you say they could do everything? Wouldn't be as much fun. So basically, an MTC is permitted to do every single thing, every single aspect of the business operation under one license. Okay. And that is because where do I have a separate slide? Okay, this slide's coming. So unless otherwise specified, whenever we're talking about a marijuana treatment center, we're referring to sites where marijuana for medical use is dispensed, cultivated, and prepared. So we're not talking, you know how we're going to talk about this in adult use. In adult use, I'll talk about a marijuana retailer. You'll hear me say marijuana product manufacturer. Those are separate business types. But under the medical marijuana regulations, you only have one license type. That is an MTC. And whether it's a cultivation facility or a product manufacturing facility, it is still an MTC. You got me? Okay, I'm going to stop beating a dead horse. I'm moving on now. So in medical marijuana, you have to be vertically integrated. Vertical integration means that you have to do everything from cultivating the marijuana to selling the marijuana. So you have to cultivate, manufacture, and retail your own marijuana and marijuana products. Under the medical regulations, you're only allowed to have 2 locations. Okay, so you can have one so you have your license, but you can have 3 licenses, but you're capped at 2 locations. You following? Good. So under this license, this 2 location, the way that people usually set it up is they will sequester the cultivation MIP. They'll have the infused product preparation in one location and they'll dispense in another location. An example of this will be Netta. So has anybody been to Netta in Brookline? Okay, I mean, I guess we're on camera. I'm not gonna ask you to incriminate yourself. Sheesh. Okay. But if you happen to have a friend who made their way to Netta and they told you about it, what they would have told you is that they're not cultivating in Brookline, right? I don't even think they're making infused products. They're making all their infused products in Forge Park, Franklin, Massachusetts. So and that's important because they started in medical initially. So that is how they usually separate these. The operation is restricted to the address identified in the license type. So you can't just have your uncle's land in, Lord knows where, Massachusetts, decide to go grow there. It can only be in the place that has been identified in the license application. Y'all following? So the reason they did that is because they in their minds, the medical marijuana program was designed for the specific purpose of providing patients medicine. And they thought that if an entity were vertically integrated, it was the best method to ensure that the market would have product. So if in order for you to operate, you would have to not only have product, you'd have to sell it as well. It would ensure that there'd be sufficient product for patients. I don't think that any of them read an economics book about competition. But again, my mama told me not to throw shade anymore, and I'm really trying to listen to her. Okay, so when I initially started my business, we were looking to open a vertically integrated medical marijuana facility. And our business model was around $9 to $10 million. Because to be honest with you guys, to make this business model make sense, you would have to cultivate your own product and make infused products. Infusion itself, extraction itself can be a $300,000 equipment alone. So you're retailing at one location. You would need to have all three locations open in order for it to financially make sense under that model, which is why you would need $9 to $10 million to get started. But then this is where equity was where they missed the ball on equity. So we're talking about raising $10 million. You need $500,000 in liquid assets in order for you to even apply. How is an average person going to, but not even a person who went through a college student, anybody who went through college who has over $150,000 worth of debt, how are they going to access this kind of capital? So effectively, it ensures that those who were able to have access previously were able to navigate it, which is why Netta, who started out in Chicago, was able to be one of the first companies to navigate this industry. I guess I'm giving you guys a lot of industry tea. Okay, it's hot. So what are some of the general requirements for MTCs? So we're going to talk about the business entity requirements, control requirements, query registration, capitalization, which I talked about briefly because it bothered me when I was trying to get into the business. Agent registration and reduced cost, or free marijuana program. Did y'all know there was a free marijuana program? You see, that's why I'm a big hater on the medical marijuana program until I get to this free marijuana program. Okay, so business entity requirements. And people usually don't know why I have a ghost on here. It's a pun because ghosts are entities. Take a pause to laugh now. You're welcome. So so business entity requirements. MTCs must be registered to do business in Massachusetts. Oftentimes I have clients from California who are already operating in California asking me if they can operate here. No new friends in Massachusetts, okay? We follow Drake here. So you have to come to Massachusetts and you have to register your business here. It has to be a domestic corporation or domestic business entity, but I don't even know why they even have that in there, because no reasonable business person would ever run a marijuana business as a sole proprietorship without having any kind of limited liability protection. That's why I had you guys do the business fundamentals before signing on to this class, so that when I said point number 2, you'd be like, Big Mama, why the hell would they even put that in there? They shouldn't give a license to a sole proprietor. Just kidding. Barely. Another thing that you have to do, you have to be in good standing with the department, with the Secretary of State, the Department of Revenue, and this is a brand new one, the Department of Unemployment Assurance Assistance. Before the regulations were rewritten last year, we did not have to bother with the DUA, but now the DUA wants to be in the mix. I guess I lied. They did want one new friend, but it took them like 3 years to make it. So how new is that? So now, moving on to control limitations and limitations on ownership. So medical marijuana treatment centers, there's this rule that I like to call the no hoarding rule, but that's not what it's called in the regs. And any person who's what I'm going to describe as a person or entity having direct or indirect control, a PEDIC, they can only own 3 licenses, and they can only own 3 MTCs. You following it? So no PEDIC can be granted or hold more than 3 MTC licenses. Now at this point, I see your faces. You're like, Big Mama, what's a PEDIC? That name sounds uncomfortable for me. I know. I don't know how else to pronounce it, but I came up with it. See, even Cardi B's confused. Okay, so let's help her out. Let me explain to you what a PEDIC is. A PEDIC is a person or entity who either has direct or indirect control over the marijuana business. Now, the reason I lumped it into PEDIC as to one, it's because the state doesn't care whether you have control directly or indirectly. You're treated the same. Okay? So let's start and talk about what they consider direct control. So you have direct control over the operations of a marijuana treatment center if you are an owner. And an owner is anybody who has 10% equity or more. If you have 10% or more interest in terms of voting rights. So if you have the right, if you have 10% or more voting interest in the MTC, you have direct control. Also, if you have the right to veto significant events. Now your good little lawyer minds are asking right now, what's a significant event? I don't know. Okay? It hasn't been litigated, but I can tell you what some significance could be. The right to sell your business is a significant event. Exclusivity contracts are significant events. So things of those, you know, who to hire and who to fire, things like that are big events. And if you're like hiring a CEO versus a board of directors, are you following? It hasn't been litigating, so we have to guess. And people always want answers, so I'm gonna pull something out of nowhere for you, okay? But those are some of the examples that I've heard thrown around by members in the of the commission. Okay, the close associate thing, I'm gonna tell you guys right now, between me and you, this is our secret, right? You ain't telling nobody. When I was going through my licensing process and I asked the Cannabis Control Commission to tell me how to define a close associate, their reaction, what they told me is, we don't understand it, so we don't even look at it. If someone's important, put them in the section of your application where you would put somebody who has direct or indirect control, but don't put them in the close associate. They don't really even get it. And I was like, really? They said, yes, Big Mama. So, but I say this, but I'm going to explain to you what it means. A close associate is a person who holds a relevant managerial, operational, or financial interest in the business. By virtue of that interest or power, can exercise a significant influence over the management, operations, or finances of the marijuana establishment that's adult use, of an MTC, or an independent testing laboratory. So what did that tell you? Like, their friends? What if their friends are giving them advice? What if I'm a spouse and I have a record and I'm giving, like, it just got really dicey, and I think this one's gonna be a little tough for them to figure out. But one of the things I want you guys to understand, that the CCC takes these control limitations very seriously. Like, they do not play. And they have written these regulations in a way where they are so broad and so vague that almost anything constitutes ownership. The reason that matters is you're restricted to 3 license types, and companies are getting in trouble left and right for owning way too many licenses. So I have a feeling that some of you who want to litigate in this space will be working, #making bread, off these cases in the future. So moving forward, how else do you have direct control? So I said you're an owner because of financial interest. You have 10% voting rights. You're a close associate, or you have contractual or other authority to control by virtue of having the right to make decisions regarding the operations and strategic planning, capital allocations, acquisitions, and divestments, appointing more than 50% of the directors. I actually had an issue come up with this in one of the contracts for one of my clients, where this major MSO wants to invest in their business, and on the face of the contract, you guys, it looks great. Like, we're giving you this percentage, you get X amount, and when you start reading it, they elect 2 out of 3 board of directors, right? 2 out of 3 board of directors are elected, and they need unanimous decisions for most things. I mean, sorry, they need majority approval for most things. So what does that mean? The MSO gets to control that little company, right? Because the MSO effectively has 67% of the board of directors, who gets to appoint who? The officers. And the officers get to operate the day-to-day business. So ultimately, these companies are still trying to take over more licenses by trying to circumvent these, but the CCC is going to start reading some of these contracts, and folks might get into trouble. So be mindful. All right, where am I? Appointing corporate level officers, making major marketing, production, and financial decision, executing significant and exclusive contracts, and earning 10% or more of profits, or 10% or more dividends. You got it? This making sense? So this ownership analysis is getting pretty complicated. This was not the case when I first started. When I first taught this class, the only requirement was the first slide. You can't have 3 licenses in each type, but too many people try to circumvent it. So the CCC tried to clarify it. And you know what happens when a regulatory body tries to clarify anything? It gets clearer, right? Just kidding. The opposite. Okay, what's indirect control? Indirect control is any person or entity who has indirect control, who by virtue of having a controlling interest in an indirect holding or parent company. Because what was happening is these companies were starting and forming these management companies, and these management companies would be controlling the licensee. So now the CCC says, wait a minute, I want to see who the parent companies are. Not only do I want to see who the parent companies are, if you are the CEO or the executive director of these independent holding and parent companies, you're also an owner. You're also a PEDIC. And any person or an entity who has a position to indirectly control the decision making of the MTC has indirect control. Why also does this matter? Because everybody who invests in marijuana does not want to be publicly associated with marijuana, correct? It sounds stupid. Like, if you're going to be in the industry, show your face, right? Say it with your chest, to quote Kevin Hart. But everybody's not willing to do that. So I have had a lot of investors who did not want to invest a certain percentage because they were unwilling to put their name on the application. And now that Big Mama has her provisional, do you know what she's saying? Ha ha. To quote The Simpsons. All right, moving forward. Restrictions applicable to specific lines of business. You have independent testing laboratories. If you own an interest in any independent testing laboratory, you can't own an interest in any other class, right? Let's see, restrictions applicable to cultivation facilities. If you own a cultivation facility, you're capped at 100,000 square feet of canopy. What is that? How do you calculate canopies? I'm glad you asked. It's calculated by measuring the identifiable boundaries of all the areas that is going to contain mature plants at any point in time. It doesn't have to be continuous. You could do it based off rooms. Like, some people have like veg rooms. They have various types of rooms. And you can also do it by benches. So you can calculate the number of plants that you have on a bench, and the square foot of the bench will count towards your canopy. So there are a number of ways that you can do this. If mature plants are being cultivated using a shelving system, the surface area of each level shall be included. This is a new provision because people were starting to develop vertical grows. And as you can tell, the vertical grow can use the surface area, right? And also use the height. And so they were getting a lot of weed, y'all, a lot of weed by doing that. And the CCC doesn't like people getting too much weed, so they went and they included this and clarified that you have to calculate the surface area of each of those shelves if you're growing vertically, which sucks because I know this guy in Massachusetts whose entire business model was constructing these pre-made cultivation boxes that were designed on being on cultivating vertically. And his whole sales pitch was that because he cultivates vertically, you're going to be the only person in Massachusetts who's capable of getting this grow. But now that's false. He's going to have to remarket. So you guys, when you're applying to the CCC, you've got to, I love this picture. You've got to let them know about your notice. You have to give them notice of these relationships, okay? First, you've got to let them know that you have direct control. You have to let them know whether you have direct control, your own, and if you have direct control, is it ownership via 10% equity? Is it voting rights, close associate? Is it through contract or right to control? Do you have indirect ownership? You have to be listed on the application. If you have an interest in laboratory, you have to reveal that because you cannot own an interest in an MTC. You also have to reveal whether you have an interest in a marijuana establishment cultivation that's adult use, or marijuana an MTC, because you can only have 100,000 square feet max in the state. You following? Good. Next. In addition, at least one executive of the entity has to register with the Department of Justice so that they can provide access to Massachusetts only criminal offender record information. Now, capitalization requirement. At this point, I'm going to stop and shout out to Nipsey Hussle. Nipsey Hussle I put him up here because Nipsey knows how to capitalize, right? He was able to creatively capitalize his business by selling his mixtape for how much? Anybody knows? He was selling his mixtape for like $100 per mixtape. Jay-Z bought 1,000 mixtapes from him, and that allowed him to capital. So most rappers weren't selling for their mixtapes this much. So I don't know why I animated that or even how I did it, but Nipsey's moving. So shout out to Nipsey. I mentioned earlier in class that there was a capitalization requirement. In order for you to even apply for a license in Massachusetts, you had to prove that you had $500,000 in liquid assets for your first location and $500,000 for every additional location. Since you were capped at 3 locations, that it amounted to boku bucks to apply, right? Agent registration. You guys liking my puns? I do it for you, okay? I do it for you. And the great thing about this agent, very much so like Will Smith, how it gave you amnesia. They say that smoking too much might give you short-term memory loss. And so it's a full pun. I thought about this fully. All right, let's keep going. All MTC agents have to be registered with the CCC. That means an employee, an owner, a board member. Employees include consultants or contractors who provide on-site services. Executives, managers, and volunteers. Agents have to be 21 years of age to participate in the industry. And I told you guys, the medical marijuana program has this reduced cost or free marijuana program. Do you know why they would have this program as opposed to having this type of program in adult use? Anybody? Good. I guess I'll just ask one of my friends who lives in my head to answer. Okay, I'll pull her out. So the reason is because they want to encourage patients to have access, and finances should not be an impediment to having access to medicine. However, they don't want to encourage people having fun or self-medicating. So they're not going to encourage you giving away free cannabis. In fact, they're going to heavily tax it so they can disincentivize you. But heavy taxes has never stopped anyone from participating in any vice. So let's go. So the plan, you have to submit a plan to the CCC in order for you to obtain your license to provide reduced cost or free marijuana to patients with documented, verified financial hardship. The plan must outline the goals, the programs, and measurements that the MTC will pursue as part of the program. Now let's talk about some specific requirements when it comes to cultivation, product manufacturing, dispensing, and home delivery. You guys ready? Is this good? Is this good? Is this boring you? I can always talk about Nipsey Hussle some more. All right, let's talk about cultivation operations. So the general requirements. So you can only perform your cultivation operations at the approved addresses. Like I said, you can't just have a piece of land in, I don't know, Wareham and feel like you can cultivate there and sell it. That's not gonna fly. I don't know why I said that so specifically. I'm not throwing shade at anybody specifically in Wareham this time, although I wish there was someone because I hate wasting shade. So allowed activities. At this, at the cultivation locations, MTCs may only cultivate, process, and package marijuana. Okay, you can transport marijuana to its own MTCs and transfer marijuana to other MTCs. Transfer means the sale of marijuana or marijuana products from a marijuana establishment to a separate marijuana establishment, independent testing laboratory. So when I say transfer, they're selling it. When I say transport, they're carrying it like FedEx. Get it? Maybe, I mean, it's fine if you don't get it. I don't get a lot about life. Like, why are we even here? Okay. All right. You can, but understand MTCs can deliver to consumers, but you cannot deliver directly to consumers from a cultivation operation. Got it? So cultivation operations. So back in the day, there was no cap in medical for cultivation. You could literally have a 1 million square foot facility in Massachusetts. But the activists came in because they thought it was unfair because seeing how difficult it was to even access the medical marijuana licensing process, the only individuals who would have been able to operate if it was 1 million square foot are those who have massive amounts of money and would have created a monopoly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And so the CCC listened and said, "You're right. We're going to cap it at 100,000 square feet, and we're going to give you and we're going to divide it into 11 tiers. The first tier is going to be 5,000 square feet, and it's going to go all the way up to 100,000 square feet. So at the time that you apply for licensing, you let the CCC know what size you're applying for. And once you've applied, say you start at 5,000 square feet and you want to expand to 10,000 square feet. Well, just like Cardi B doesn't like to choose, you ain't got to choose either. You ain't stuck. You can then choose to expand to a higher tier. Okay. So but there are conditions. If you want to expand from 5,000 square feet to a higher tier, you have to prove that at least 6 months prior to the application for expansion, you were able to sell at least 85% of your product. So if you're not moving your product, if you can't finish what's on your plate, you can't get more, right? And why would they do that? Do you know why? For a couple, I'm getting used to responding to my own questions, and I'm not even giving you guys an opportunity. I apologize. Do you guys know why? Good. I retract. Let the record show that I retract my apology. Okay, the reason, I don't know if you guys have been following Oregon. How Oregon, I mean, the market's getting a little better, but Oregon did not have any cap on issuing cultivation licenses. So what ended up happening is the market got flooded with marijuana to the point where you were able to buy a pound of weed for like $600, $800. Just to compare, a pound of weed right now is $5,000 in the legal market and $3,000 in the black market. So you're seeing that the overproduction caused massive issues with being able to maintain prices, in the industry suffered. So the CCC wants to ensure that a similar situation doesn't occur here. So one way is to make sure that those who have their license types are able to manage what they have before they can take on what they have. And not to keep the Cardi B train going, but it ain't safe. This is what G-Eazy. Just because you're at 10,000 square feet does not mean that you're safe at that tier. Because when you submit your application to renew your license type, the CCC is going to review your sales record in your cultivation records. If they see that you were unable to sell at least 70% of your products within the 6 months prior to your renewal, they're gonna relegate you to a lower tier, okay? And you know what's the worst part, y'all? There's no way of knowing which tier they're going to relegate you to. So say you had 50,000 square feet and you end up selling only 10,000 square feet of that. Well, do they relegate you to 10,000 square feet or do they relegate you to 20,000 square feet? No one knows. But what we do know is, how did I get so far? What we do know is that they determine whether they're going to relegate you and what tier to relegate you based on these 5 factors. They're going to look at your cultivation and production history, including whether your plants in your inventory suffered any catastrophic events. So did you have mold? Did you have a fire? Did you get robbed? Okay, they're going to look at all these things. Also, they're going to look at your tax payment history. Anybody knows the government won't even look at you if you ain't paying your taxes. Look at what the government did to Blade and Lauryn Hill. Lauryn Hill, killing me softly. So if they don't care about Lauryn, they ain't gonna care about your ass when it comes to paying taxes. So you've got to pay your taxes when it comes to relegation as well. So they're also going to look at sales contract. Say, for example, you have half of your square footage, you have an exclusivity contract for it, for a company that's almost on the verge of opening their doors, but hasn't quite opened their door yet. Well, 6 months before, you might have decided that you might not be able to sell it because of the contract that you made. So they're going to look at the contracts to make sure that you're not moving, you're not moving product just because you can't, but you're unable to move it because you actually are contractually prohibited from moving it. Is this making sense? And finally, they're going to look at any other factors relevant to ensuring responsible cultivation, production, and inventory management. I assume they'll also look at things like it's your first year. There are kinks that are going to grow when you're during your first cultivation process. I don't know if anybody here cooks, but sometimes it takes a while to get to know your kitchen. It's the same thing with getting to know a cultivation facility in terms of temperature, humidity, and really, especially if you're building these new facilities, even a cultivator who's very experienced has to develop a relationship with the space where they can tune in to grow. So I'm hoping, I guess I'm making my plea. CCC, please give us a break if we don't make it. All right. All right. Product manufacturing operations. Now you're probably thinking, what is this illustration? I think that this is what people think when they think about people making extractions. I don't know about you, right? And one of my business partners, this is an anecdote. One of my former business partners, one of the reasons he got arrested was because he actually caused an explosion in his basement when he was in the black market prior to being a legal citizen, a law-abiding citizen. And when the firefighters came into his apartment, they found the weed and he got arrested. Quite unfortunate, but it's a great story now that he's successful. Okay, moving forward. So product manufacturing is very similar to cultivation. You can only conduct this activity at the approved location. The allowed activities, you can process, obtain, manufacture, process, and package marijuana products at this location. You can transport to other MTCs, transfer to your own, but you cannot deliver to patients directly from these manufacturing operations. Manufacturer, like I mentioned before, I think I defined that earlier for you guys. Are you guys ready to talk about dispensing operations? I think you're ready. So again, similarly, you cannot the one on the left, this made me laugh because this is literally what people think marijuana owners look like. El Chapo. Well, this is literally who they look like. Karen Munkasi. She's actually a very lovely lady. I've met her. She volunteered to be nice. But since we're in this class and I'm here to serve tea, right? Aren't I here to serve tea for y'all? Do you guys know what this lady's company just got fined Boku bucks for doing? So they were spraying pesticides that were banned on their products and falsifying records to prevent the CCC from seeing it. So, but everybody makes mistakes, y'all. I'm not about cancel culture. But this is, I'm still laughing at it, but I laugh at my own jokes because I can't hear you guys. Let's keep it moving. So you got to go at approved locations, allowed activities. At the dispensing location only, you can purchase and transport marijuana products from MTCs and transport, sell, or otherwise transport to registered qualifying patients. So at these dispensing operations, those are the only places out of which you can dispense marijuana, be it in person in the brick and mortar facility or via home delivery. Now, with the change in regulations that are taking place in the adult use delivery, I can see the CCC making these dispensing home delivery regulations match. So we might see MTCs being able to deliver directly from wholesalers now, but that's Big Mama speculating. Okay. All right. I'm going to keep it moving now. Home delivery, they are allowed to deliver. I think most people are not aware that MTCs are the only marijuana businesses in the state who have had a monopoly over delivery. Let's see. And they can only deliver to residences and to caregiving institutions at their caregiving institution. But not every MTC can deliver. You have to get approval from the MTC in order for you to do that. Delivery employees have to be employees of the MTC and have a valid agent registration. That's important because in order for you to be an agent, you have to go through valid background checks. Delivery permitted only from self-fulfilling MTC. What does that mean? You're only allowed to deliver from an MTC that is producing its own product and that fulfills its own orders. Okay? An MTC cannot pick up marijuana and marijuana products from another MTC. So if I am MTC A, I can't pick up products from MTC B in order to deliver to a qualified patient. Gotcha? I can only deliver my own thing. And it can, but however, you can use a third-party technology platform provider. You're saying, Big Mama, what that is? That's kind of like the person who administers Uber Eats. You know how like in Uber Eats, they have like the software on their phones and like there's like these little people inside the phone who take the order and make sure that everything. So those little people, you can hire them. All right. All right. The maximum amount of retail value of products in the vehicle is $10,000. That's not that much. So they also have to have seed to sale tracking. So all items need to be tracked from the point of seeding to the point of sale. Delivery time limitations. This is where things get really boring. In Massachusetts, all deliveries must be completed by 9 p.m. You can only deliver between 9 p.m. and 8 a.m. in Massachusetts. Deliveries cannot occur between 9 p.m. and 8 a.m. in Massachusetts. But I'm like, why do I have to order my weed by 9 p.m.? I don't get, you get out of work, you don't get home till 7 p.m., you haven't showered. By 9 o'clock, that's when you're ready to hit the app and get them to deliver. But nah, they're going to mess you. You got to plan ahead now. Like we're the plan ahead. They gave us microwaves. Now they want us to order by 9 p.m. Get out of here. Okay, I'm done. To say, Big Mama, get off your soapbox. So you have a duty to minimize the amount of cash in your vehicle. And now that in the time period that we live in, it's a lot easier to do. And that's because there are at least 5 banks in the Commonwealth that are providing cash management services to businesses in the state. So from debit card processing to processing online payments, a lot of these things you're going to be able to do in the space now, which you were not able to do even 3-4 years ago. All marijuana products delivered have to be delivered by or on behalf of the MTC, and they have to comply with the self-fulfillment requirement, meaning that they have to fill their own orders. They can only deliver products that they received a specific order for. And they can only deliver products that have been destined for an identified qualifying patient or caregiver. And they can take orders directly through the third-party technology platform. There are some restrictions on delivery location. MTCs can only deliver to primary residences. They cannot make deliveries to dormitories. They can't deliver to your on-campus college. They can't deliver to federally subsidized housing. They can't deliver to shelters or residential homes. An institutional caregiver, however, can receive products at their caregiving institutions. At this point, you start seeing a little bit of injustice because the people who are going to be most impacted are those who are low income, right? If you're a low income person, you essentially have no place to consume cannabis legally because you can't consume cannabis outside in public. You'll be subject to a fine. Also, shelters and residential programs. Why is that important? It's because it's not just about smoking weed. We're talking about people who might have actual ailments that this plant is helping them treat. And because of their economic status, they don't have the ability to consume in a safe manner. So I'm gonna get back on a soapbox to say this is why every single one of you here is an activist, because it's about humanity and about human beings having access to something that helps them with ailments that they have. Okay, so orders for home delivery have to be received by the MTC and completed after confirmation of the registered agent's residence. So there's actually a website that they provide you, the HUD website, that you go into and you type in the area where you intend to deliver, and it'll pop up all the federally subsidized homes. So you're not permitted to deliver to those locations. One important thing that you can only deliver shelf stable products. That pisses me off because what if I could get ice cream? Okay? Like, can you imagine getting infused ice cream? They're ruining everything. But that's why, again, you guys, you have to lobby for our right to get ice cream. Everything's serious for me. Homelessness, ice cream, you think there's separation? I don't. Just kidding. So deliveries, so it has to be shelf stable. Labeling and packaging, they have to be packaged in accordance to labeling requirements, and I'll talk about those later. If products are refused, they have to be returned to the dispensing facility. You have to return it to the dispensary. So the vehicles that are used, they have to be owned or leased by the MTC. It has to be properly registered by as a commercial vehicle, inspected and insured. A lot of times people are always asking me, Laury, I want to get into marijuana, but I don't want to own any plant touching business. This vehicle ownership business is a great way to get into it. If you own some cars, like you own 5 Priuses that are laying around, you can literally lease them to a marijuana business and have income coming in without you necessarily having to run a marijuana business. And you can structure the deal where you can get a percentage of profits by virtue of the cars being your investment. I'm only here to sprinkle some seeds into your minds because I already told you who's allowed to be in delivery. Micro businesses, economic empowerment, social equity. If you want to get into any of those businesses and you're not part of those programs, you have to get creative. And perhaps buying the cars could be a way. I'm just saying. But I'm going to get back to this because you didn't come here for me to tell you what businesses to start. Okay? I don't know what brought you here, but I'm going to do what I came here to do. Okay, delivery log. Everybody has to have a delivery log that includes the location of the originating MTC, date at which the vehicle leaves. They're going to control the mileage of the transporting vehicle at departure, mileage on arrival, mileage on return. I'm saying all this to show how regulated this is. This is very much so in contrast to what happened in DC, right? I don't think they had any logs. So every delivery has to have a manifest. The reason I'm blowing through this a little bit is because I remember I told you a lot of these things replicate in the adult use. I'm going to do a deeper dive into these sections when we get into adult use because I think that it's going to be more pertinent to you. I mean, I don't know your business. Some of y'all might have medical cards already, but I think adult use is going to be the hot topic. Okay. So remember I talked to you guys about the secret shopper program and you guys were like, what is that? And I'm like, yo, the CCC did a great job at keeping the secret. And then I did return that joke again. You're welcome. It's like an outfit. You only gonna wear the outfit once? No. Okay. All right. Secret shopper program. So what is it? So I actually used to be a part of this organization called the Massachusetts Recreational Consumer Council. This organization realized that a lot of marijuana cultivation facilities, the medical facilities, were selling products that were contaminated with mold. And we had some people who were actually on the board working in some of these places, and they witnessed it and were whistleblowers, got fired, etc. So what we decided when I was on the board was we were going to ask the CCC to include this program where they would send shoppers to stores who would purchase product and then go and test them randomly to see if people are compliant. So I know that this isn't popular in the streets to know that I was involved in what would be called a snitching program. I hope this does not raise me to the level of being a Tekashi 6ix9ine or a Jimmy Fletcher. Let the streets know, you guys. Let the streets know that Big Mama's still real. But yeah, but we did institute that because when it comes to patients and their health, we want to really ensure that they're getting the best product. And if you're sick, you're not getting something with mold in it that's making you more ill. And so that's what the secret shopper program is. And you can get in trouble, you can get written up. You might have to adhere to a plan to ameliorate the issues. And I think that's all I have to say about that. Any questions? the snitching program. So now I just told you guys all about this license type. And despite my shade, I showed you guys there are some good parts about owning an MTC. From an economic perspective, it's the only license type that allows you to legally sell weed to someone who's 18 years old. So 18 to 20. If you want to hit that 18 to 20 market where they're not paying taxes on their cannabis, it's a great way to go. But it's a very niche market to build an entire business on, that 18 to 20 market. But I guess people do it. Then they have 17 magazine. All right. So the MTC license application is 3 sections: the application of intent, a background check, and the management and operations profile. The applicant may complete them in any order that they want. So let's talk about the application of intent briefly. I talked about you needing to be a Massachusetts business, so you have to provide proof of that. You have to disclose the interests of individuals. So remember I was telling you those pedics? This is when you let them know who these pedics are. They also want to know whether you have any past or present business in other jurisdictions. If you get in trouble for operating your business improperly in another jurisdiction, that is grounds for denying your license in this jurisdiction. So it's very important that you are compliant everywhere you go. The documentation of your startup capital, you have to get a surety bond to cover the cost of like destroying your weed if you were to go bankrupt. And the CCC had to come in and destroy the marijuana, so that's the cost of that. Your host agreement, we're going to talk about what a community outreach meeting is, but you need to have one where you go off and you tell the community about what you intend to operate there. You need a plan to comply with local zoning. There is a plan to positively impact areas of disproportionate impact. We're going to talk about all of this when we get to adult use, but the plan to positively impact areas is something that every marijuana business needs to do. Every marijuana business in the state has to have a plan where they give back to the community, to one of 29 neighborhoods that the CCC has identified as being most impacted by the war on drugs. So this is another great thing about this industry, is by virtue of operating in it, you're forced to be a good person, I guess. Or yeah, I guess you can do the bare minimum. Companies have actually been denied licensing because their direct impact programs are insufficient. An example of an insufficient direct impact program was a group who decided to give money to the police. And I was like, bruh, this your direct impact program? Like, I'm not trying to come at you because, again, I began by saying my mama said stop throwing shade at people. But mama, to the police, we're having this whole thing because they were enforcing the law improperly and throwing people in jail at a disproportionate rate. Even after we got legal weed, they're still throwing people in jail at 3.9 times more than our other counterparts. Them? You're gonna give them? Okay. But this is not it. But that's not what I said. That's what the CCC said. And that's why the CCC did not give them their license, okay? Stop judging Big Mama. What else do you have to do? You have to go through a background check. Why? Because they don't like people who paid their dues in prison to come out and have good lives, okay? They want you to keep suffering. So, so you have to have a background check. Next, you also have to have a management and operations profile. What is that? This is when you submit your policies and procedures. When you submit your application, the CCC has to be able to tell from reading your application that you have enough knowledge to be able to operate this business successfully. So if you're submitting this is why they ask you to submit your policies and procedures. If you submit your policies and procedures and it looks like you haven't read the regulations, you're saying you're going to do things like, give out discounts and give free giveaways and all this stuff, which is definitely not included in the regulations. That's a clear indication that you're not prepared to be given a license. You also have to have a detailed summary, like I mentioned, of your plan to provide free or low-cost marijuana. Um, and let me define what verified hardship means for you guys. You have a verified financial hardship if you're the recipient of Mass Health, if you have SSI, if your individual income does not exceed 300% of the federal poverty level, adjusted for family size. So that's what you need to submit to apply for your MTC license. When you submit your license, the CCC will review them on a rolling basis. Like I mentioned, they'll be reviewed for compliance with the laws, suitability for licensure, and evaluation of thoroughness of your application's response. Once you receive the application, they'll let you know if it's complete. Once the application is complete, the CCC will have 90 days to give you an answer whether you've been approved or denied. Within that time, once it's complete, like I mentioned, they're gonna call the municipality in which you operate. They're gonna ask them whether you've complied with their requirements. If you have, then they tell the CCC. If they don't respond within 60 days, you have a presumption that you've complied. If they say no, then you might have to go into a process where you have to fight for your rights. Not your right to party, but your right to operate your marijuana establishment on that local level. Let's see. That's it. Okay. So after you submit the application, it's complete. You have a presumption, or the town said you're okay. The CCC approves you. They issue you what they call a provisional license. This license does not allow you to even have one seed of cannabis in possession. Then you're like, Laury, what does this provisional license allow me to do? Well, it allows you to begin to construct your business. You can start logging on to Metric to figure out how to operate it. You can construct your business. Prior to building out your business, you have to submit your architectural design. So if you're going to be renovating or building doing new construction, that renovation has to be approved by the CCC through an architectural review. You can only submit the architectural review after having obtained your provisional license. Is this making sense? Making sense? So you get your provisional, you go through architectural review, okay? After you go through architectural review, the state says, yes, you're good to go. You build out your facility. Once you build out your facility, are you ready to open? Joyce, I see you shaking your head. That's a hell no. You're not ready to open. Because then the state got to come in and inspect to make sure that you've complied. And so once you pass inspection, then you get your final license, okay? Now you're ready to open your business and start selling marijuana and making people happy. These licenses are only for 1 year. You have to renew them 60 days from the date of, from the expiration date. What can't you do? Okay, so here are some prohibitions when it comes to dispensing. Unless authorized, an MTC cannot dispense, deliver, or authorize or otherwise transfer marijuana to a person other than a registered qualifying patient, to another MTC or a laboratory. And remember what I said, transfer means sell. So they can't sell to a marijuana laboratory because they're only being tested. Unless otherwise authorized, an MTC cannot acquire marijuana or marijuana plants except through the cultivation of marijuana by that MTC or another MTC. They can get seeds and cuttings from other genetic plants. Cuttings or genetic plants can only be acquired within 90 days of receiving a final certificate of licensure. Yeah, like I said, when you get your provisional, it does not allow you to have marijuana. You have to wait till you get your provisional, your final license. All right. Also, you cannot provide free weed. The only individual you can give free weed to are those who have verified hardship. Product restrictions, unless authorized, you cannot sell any product other than marijuana, MIPs, marijuana seeds, or other accessories. I don't really know what they're talking about with this because people sell everything. And when I think when I think they're talking about you can't sell any other products, I think they're talking more like tobacco, alcohol, things like that. No on-site consumption, which is very unfortunate. Um, no, you can't. That's pretty obvious. You can't mess with the marijuana. No adulteration. No sales to patients with hardship cultivation. So if you've been given the right to cultivate, you cannot sell to a patient. But if you're 21 years old, I don't see why you would have hardship cultivation since you can have 6 plants. And that's it for today.